Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. This is the Shades of Love and the Universal Connection. We've had a couple different webinars before this, one being the Universal Connection, the key to the Universal Connection, and we just did trauma in the Universal Connection. All really fun webinars with good information, introductory as far as what the universal connection is and how we connect. So I just wanted to put this out there. Universal connection, how we connect here at Evolve Ministry is through unconditional love, through positivity, through creating harmony within ourselves and connecting to the external world. And building a relationship that way. We can also do this with other people, with plants, with animals, with the elements. It's just as far we are looking for a response from the system, but also we're looking to build and create and sustain harmony wherever we go. And so this universal connection with the key of unconditional love is how we do that. So with unconditional love, we're going to go straight into tonight's webinar. So I wanted to, first of all, get an audience perspective of love, perhaps your definition, perhaps the way it feels, perhaps some of the things that this word love brings out of people. So would anybody like to give their definition, maybe discuss a little bit about what that is for them? Eric.
I guess the best definition for me is an example of when someone very special comes into my life. I always seem to be much more motivated to do things when it's not just for myself. It inspires a sense of creativity within me, and a motivation and a drive that really only exists when that person is there. Typically, it's a female. So,
yep.
That is, I guess, what love does for me. It brings that out, and then it raises my sense of love also for myself. And then I just start noticing that things start just coming to me much easier than before because I have that love and that extra positivity. So
cool. So you get like a boost.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. Thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Okay. All right. Well, love for me is this word that is confusing because we have unconditional love, which is the love we have for our parents, our dog, basically anything that there's no condition. So basically unconditional love means that you love something no matter what. Nothing is going to sway your level of love or affection or your respect for someone per se. And then we have the other side of love, which is what we all typically know as romantic love. And this love can be looked at as far as the ego, because typically it energizes or stimulates the lower energy centers. This having to do with some of the sensory feelings, the expectations we have on other people, perhaps possessiveness, dependency. So that's an example of romantic love. And I'm pretty sure everyone has experienced some of those to some degree. But the biggest part of this romantic love is typically someone's happiness is dependent upon someone else's. So say I'm in a relationship my level of happiness is based upon whether or not my girlfriend is happy, or maybe she's upset with me or something like that. You know, our communication changes based upon conditions. All right. So, and that can be tricky, because if we're looking to have a universal connection and we're getting bombarded with expectations, we're getting bombarded with lower frequencies, we're getting bombarded with feelings, and all of these things are signals, but we want to make sure that we are in control of our mind and our body, rather allowing someone else, the intimate relationship or the emotions, to control us. Does that make sense? All right, so anyone want to kind of share some experience or something where they were in an unconditional love state, pulled into an egoic state, or just perhaps something that has happened that puts you more into the ego state of mind, where you weren't necessarily aware, or just, I don't know, I just would like to open it up to you guys to discuss perhaps some of the experiences you've had.
I just want to add something up really quick. You know, with unconditional love, you know, I want to say, you know, a mother, a father too, but mostly the mother, you know, no matter what the son or daughter does in life, you know, the mom's always going to love that child, whether the child, you know, has any kind of illnesses or there's something bad in society, you know, no matter what, that's unconditional love, because no matter what he or she did or is doing, it's always going to be love. That's what I see it. I see it, especially with all mothers, you know. So that's, especially mothers, they have unconditional love to their children, you know. So that's my definition of unconditional love.
Definitely. That's a good example.
Well, when it comes to an example, I have a good one where, I mean, relationship-wise, it's always how you get introduced in the beginning of, I don't know, when you grow up and you become a teenager for the first time, and for me, it was an experience of like being at a party with friends in the backyard of somebody's house, and getting introduced for the first time with this idea of liking somebody beyond just being totally friends with your entire environment, with everybody. And I just remember never having before that, I never had a perception of like, I like this person more for some reason. And then suddenly I kind of like got introduced to this whole thing because we were playing this game of writing on a piece of paper who you like more in the crowd than others. And I'm like, wait, what does this mean? Like more than others. So I'm looking at my friend and seeing what he put, and I'm like thinking, okay, I'll just copy his answer because it'll be easy that way. So I did. And then it got me in trouble because then they thought that I liked this girl, and this girl we started having more of a relationship, and just cascaded from there. And it's a matter of like, it was my first experience of discovering that you could love somebody more. And then there's also repercussions to disclosing it to others, or to actually taking it upon yourself. And another example was when I had a different relationship later on during my military service, and I was in a bad place. A lot of things were happening in my life, and I just needed a friend and somebody. So I liked this girl, and she liked me, and it was just comfortable and good. But she was going through a lot of stuff within her, and she didn't communicate to me. And I was just like, I was in such a bad place myself that I just needed somebody, probably for the wrong reasons, but I just needed somebody in order to feel the love, because where I was, I didn't feel. I needed somebody. So it's kind of like tricky, where you kind of try to understand what love is, but it can also sort of take you on this wild ride where you're burnt out afterwards. That somebody doesn't give you the love that you were looking for, and your expectations are pretty much fall apart in front of you.
Yeah, and that both good examples. I remember the first time I felt that feeling too. I thought it was kind of weird. Still think it's weird, but that is a good segue into this universal connection, because you said that we get pulled into these things, these relationships. We go into them. We have someone might not be for the right time or the right reason, and I think that is essential because we as human beings, I think we thrive, or we want connection with another human being. We want connection, and we have to some degree innate urges, I guess, for more sensory gratification in relationships, and that's okay. But the thing is, a lot of times the emotional need, the love that we need to build within ourselves, we are seeking outside of ourselves with that other person. And so this other person is supposed to fulfill that need we have. And so when we have these romantic relationships, it can get tricky because our emotions are invested into it. We do love this person, and I myself, I unconditionally love everyone. And in relationships, it can be difficult because you don't understand why it's not reciprocated, you know? And so we have to learn to be whole ourselves so we can be alone, so we can know ourselves. And when we're at a point that we can be in a relationship, given romantic relationship, we'll meet someone that can meet us at that same level, that can help us evolve, and we can help them evolve. So this unconditional love relationship that we, or this romantic relationship, that we might be involved in, there should definitely be a universal harmony, universal relationship as well. So we can boost each other, and it's not like a give and take, you know? So usually in romantic relationships, egos get triggered, one person is stronger than the other, and there tends to be some kind of pull from one person. And you can sometimes experience that as feeling tired after spending time with even a friend, but especially in relationships. So I wanted to mention that, that we need to be conscious of the relationships that we have, and the intimate relationships especially that we enter into, because we want to make sure that we don't fall into some of these, I guess, issues, you know, because it's okay to have romantic relationships. I'm not saying don't have one. Just make sure you are ready for it and ready to deal with whatever happens with it. Because as self-mastery practitioners, okay, hold on, Eric. As self-mastery practitioners, we need to be calm, cool, collected, as best as we can, self-control with emotions, and that is essential in order to better control our reality. So Eric, go ahead.
I had a rather, as I'm listening to you guys right now, and I just had some very interesting current events come into my life. In the past few weeks, a couple weeks rather, I've been sending off signals to the universe, you know, saying, you know, I want to go somewhere else. Like, I've been staying in West Virginia for a few years, and I was just rather unhappy with the living conditions. And so I sent out messages to the universe, bring me people and events into my life to help me relocate to somewhere else. And so one kind of a friend, actually an acquaintance of mine up in upstate New York, she's posted on Facebook that she was looking for someone to build a website for her. So I responded to her, and then we started communicating, and she offered me, she said she was looking for a roommate to come up and stay with her. Now, her and I, we actually have a lot in common politically. and just, some ideas, and also, eating healthy, and just a lot of things in common. So I ended up deciding, all right, you know what, I'm going to move. Well, the more I got to know her and talk to her, I ended up getting feelings for her. Romantic, but not romantic. It wasn't really caring about the sexual aspect. However, still had the intimate type of feelings for, like, wanting something more, because she was just so awesome that I could see that we have a really great connection, and a best friend type communication, right? So that event came into my life, and that I don't think that would have actually ever happened if I did not transmit that into the universe to bring that event into my life. Then I find, here comes my ex-girlfriend that I just broke up with like 6 months ago, who just yesterday, she says to me, I love you, I want to marry you. So like, I've not seen either one of these girls, one in 6 months, another one we've never met in person at all. But these events are coming into my life only because I've been sending the messages to the universe to bring these into my life. And so I don't know if that can really correlate with what you're saying, but that just brought to mind.
Yeah, it does, because the thing that I see is, and this is also from personal experience, that when you put something out to the universe, if you aren't specific, you'll get certain things back. And like you said, these two women have come in basically at the same time, it sounds like. So you have to be able to discern what is coming through, what is being provided for you. You need a place to stay, though you have feelings. Your ex-girlfriend says you want to marry you. You need to figure out, I'm not going to tell you what to do. But, in this type of situation, it's going to take time to figure out what is best for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I actually ended up, after just, communication with, people in West Virginia. I share a place with my mother and my friend, and we came together on the idea of actually going there just to get away from New Jersey, which is just a communist, terrible place to live. So we got that place together, and everybody contributes into the community, basically, is what we have there. And I actually ended up by going down to like an 80% decision to not go to New York, just because of the settings, the situation. It just doesn't seem like it would work out. However, I am absolutely grateful and appreciative that the universe responded and brought that opportunity to me. It's kind of like, be careful what you wish for. You may not always get what you want. You're just saying the specifics of it, right? However, it still responded and it delivered. So,
And sometimes, and I'll also say this, sometimes we might have a need that we need to fill within ourselves, and the universe will provide someone for that. If you are whole within yourself, perhaps that person will fill in, or not fill in, will complement you. But again, with these romantic relationships, we need to be cautious, because, like we have just mentioned, it can pull us out of the things we're doing. All right. So these romantic relationships, or these kind of, I call them egoic pulls or egoic influences, because we have a goal that we want to have within ourselves, perhaps a project we're working on, but we get distracted sometimes with relationships, or we get distracted with other things in our external environment, and so we just need to make sure that we are stable within ourselves before we enter into something such as that. Joel.
Yeah, I wanted to add that you're saying a lot of good things, Daniel, in conjunction with what Eric's saying. I wanted to say that it is really preparing yourself in the morning to clear up your channel, because you could be transmitting these preferences from a place that's not clear, that's too chattery, that's too bound to the ego, or it's working through a perspective that is going to associate itself with a lot of other material, a lot of associated material, like these other two girls. And if you're clear, if you do your practice in the morning and then set out your intentions and then set out with action, you will have a better, clear connection to receiving what you want, rather than getting a general jumbled up result.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so we were talking about relationships earlier, talking about this universal connection. One of the things that is very important with this is we want to make sure we practice our universal connection and we don't get swayed by certain things. So to build this universal connection within this field of, I guess, love, what do you guys do to feel more loving? What do you do to make that connection?
Gratitude, feeling grateful for everything and anything that comes to mind at the time. That's one thing, because you get that difference between unconditional love and romantic love that we've been talking about. So I feel like when we go, well, instead of feeling about like or feeling about our romantic partners, if you will, we can think about our parents and think, wow, you know, these people would do absolutely anything, and all they want to do is grow. They just want to see us happy and mature and you know, grow up to be better and better and better. So that kind of inspiration, motivation can be really powerful, especially if you're grateful of it. So I think that kind of helps us tune in.
Definitely. Definitely.
I also wanted to mention a little bit earlier, you can still tie into this. I believe that everything in life is like lessons, right? So it's going to be used to make ourselves better and better, as I just mentioned. So sometimes when you put something out there, say you want to have that intimate connection with someone, it can kind of come back to you in ways that you didn't expect. And be careful what you wish for, sort of thing. So just recently, to relate personally, add that element, I felt I was ready for an intimate romantic relationship. And this person almost, if like they redefined what love was for me. They had the ability to connect and care about me on a level that I didn't even really see was possible at the time. And so it didn't really work. But shortly after, there's another person that was kind of giving me everything that I could have wanted in a romantic relationship. Yet I felt like I wasn't ready, because my definition had kind of been redefined and expanded more. And so I felt almost like scared, like not ready. So these kind of lessons, they can, you know, come back to you in ways that you didn't expect and make you feel like you have to prepare yourself and be ready.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, definitely. That sounds like a good experience for you. Cool. Would anyone else like to share something about how they connect, how they build that universal connection?
I usually just think of my dog before I start moving energy, and that energy, I get better results with that because the plants notice it, and that's about it. I just try to project the love I have for my dog outward.
Excellent. Cool. Awesome. Thank you guys for participating and sharing that. I wanted to mention that because, as you notice, like we talked about previously, in these romantic relationships or these conditional relationships, a lot of times we can feel drained. So with building our universal connection, the side effects are obviously the abilities and whatnot, but it's important to notice that this universal connection is more of a flow. So you're more energized, you're more creative. The things that you are good at, you'll get better at. The things that you want to learn, you'll start to learn quicker or at a different efficiency or proficiency rather than you did before. And so that is a benefit of this universal connection. A lot of times also you'll just like, if you're trying to solve a problem in your life or come up with an idea or look at something from a different perspective, this happens to me when I practice, it comes to me. It's as if I'm getting a download that I wouldn't normally get because I wasn't open due to some egoic pull or some distraction or some emotion that I was holding on to or not, or ruminating on, you know? So it's good to make sure you try to be as connected as possible at all times, so you are you're feeling unconditional love rather than the other aspects of love that are more of a lower vibration. All right? Yes, Eric.
I guess one thing that really helps me is really remembering that this whole reality that we're experiencing right now is something that we chose to experience before we even came into it. That this is all just an experience, and that everything is constantly ever changing in this consciousness, and that we can change it, and to not get, I guess, too involved or feeling like a loss of control in everything going on in our lives. And just remembering that we can change this. It's just your thoughts can go through walls. Thoughts can go through the entire universe. And as long as we do that, and just remember that, you know, we are gods. We are God himself. All of us are connected. So I guess just remembering that and kind of disconnecting from this self-involvement, whatever the best way to describe it, and just, you know, getting to that thought process really is what helps me.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I did want to just mention, I would say we're more co-creators. God kind of has one of that connotation of like more powerful, and we are all at an equal level. But I definitely understand your analogy of that. We are definitely creators. And I think by having these positive positive thought projections, we can help build that universal connection, but also, like you said, we're all connected. And so we have to keep that in mind as well whenever we're thinking of anything. If we're negative or we're lusting over someone, those energies are going to them. And we want to make sure that we are having pure thoughts. We are having positive thoughts because we don't want to affect someone in a way that we don't want to. All right, so we need to be conscious of our thoughts, and we need to be in that unconditional love state as much as possible, and that does take practice. So, I mean, all day long we have things that might trigger us. So all day long we're practicing how to love. We're practicing this connection. We're practicing looking at ourselves in ways that can open up our awareness to see those things that we need to work through. That if we could make this universal connection more of the time, those other things that I guess kind of pull us away from our potential, those things will slowly dissipate. But we do have to remember that a lot of our issues or a lot of our triggers might have layers. So we just need to continuously love ourselves, continuously build that universal connection. And part of that is taking the time to perfect that connection in whatever way is possible. And the way that I like to do it is with trees. I have a good response when I'm walking. I have a good response when I'm working with trees or talking to them. And so that is a way that I can reconnect to everything around me rather than just sticking with myself and sticking with my mind and only listening to what's going on in there. We have to open up our awareness with this connection to everything around us to understand how we operate within it.
Well, I have a question to you, Daniel.
Yes.
I mean, we were talking the last several webinars about this movement between being connected and disconnected. I mean, what ways are we experiencing the disconnection when it comes to romantic love? How does romantic love, or that perspective of romantic love, disrupt our connection?
Good question. Well, with romantic love, this is from experience as well, basically we have to understand that our emotions are signals, and I said this earlier, in that whatever happens in our relationships, they might trigger us, but are we going to get mad? Are we going to get frustrated? Are we going to take an action that we're going to regret? Sometimes in relationships we have to reevaluate the connection we have with the person, or the connection we have with ourselves, to see if that connection is still what we want. But what you said about how these romantic relationships disrupt our connection, basically the way I see it is anytime we have an emotion in that relationship that pulls us away from being, I guess, conscious or aware, or how sometimes in relationships you just kind of ruminate on something, you get upset about something, you just talk forever, like that's a disconnection. That is a huge disruption, especially when a breakup happens. We get upset, we get down, sometimes we stop doing all the things that we love, and so we are truly disconnected, and a lot of times from ourselves, more than we're even aware of. I know in a few of the relationships that I had, I went to places in my mind that I don't ever want to go to again, because it was that pull of emotion I just didn't understand. And not understanding the uncertainty, I think, is the biggest part. And the other biggest part is the fact that when we're with someone, we're united. We seem to be one unit. And then when you disconnect from them, when you break up, that's literally what it is. It's a disconnection. You feel like there's a loss. You feel like a part of you is lost. And so that's important. That's an important thing to make sure we can handle the relationship, as you had mentioned, Jerry, before, because sometimes we don't know how it's going to handle us, or how we will handle it. And so if we are practicing self-mastery at all times, especially in these relationships, we will be able to better manage what's thrown at us in life, and especially in romantic relationships. So I hope that answered your question, Joel.
Yeah. I mean, another question is, what kind of practice keeps us from entering that type of romantic love when we see a person, attractive lady, in wherever we walk? If we go to the supermarket or go out on a trip, you see all kinds of different distractions. I mean, there's sensory distractions. Our ego wants a part of that and a part of this, and we just want to kind of have that sensory pleasure. What kind of practice do you usually do in order to calm down that sexual energy that is starting to draw our attention downwards, rather than being in an unconditional love state that we suggest people, and we pretty much teach people to practice in order to remain connected?
Well, one of the things that I do is, so in a loving state, we're up here, we're in the higher energy centers, we're feeling love, it comes from our heart, from our chest. And when we see someone of the opposite sex, or someone we find attractive, that energy, we might still be in a loving state, but it starts to pull down. And for me, I feel a heavier feeling. I literally feel it feels wrong to have an unconditional loving feeling for someone that I don't even know. So what I do is, if I don't know if all of you guys can feel how your energy moves in your body, but one, I pay attention to my thoughts and I change those. And I usually just start thinking unconditional love. And then I pull that energy that I felt drop, I pull that back up. And it might take practice, but we want to make sure we have that energy. Or if I feel that energy, rather than it being in my root chakra, I can usually bring it up a little bit more to my solar plexus, and I try to move that out into the rest of my body. So it's not necessarily right there in the root chakra. So it's a more of a, I guess, a body feeling, but that takes me away from that attraction. And so, I mean, I am curious to know what other people do as well. And perhaps you could share something, Joel, too.
Yeah, your example is pretty much something I do. I'll let you speak in a second, Jerry. I'll just share quickly. Essentially, when I see something, I recognize it as coming from the ego. And it's a matter that I understand. I go back into myself and I recognize that where I'm at and how essentially it takes a relationship to make a person or this type of bond mean something. Because if I just look at this girl and I have this sexual energy being aroused, I mean, I can go and discharge it later through pornography, but essentially, I mean, I'll be perpetuating this type of energy and this type of mentality because I'm enforcing it as a positive thing to view somebody else in a certain perspective. Okay, if I see somebody in a certain way and say, oh, that's a tight behind, or I like that whole thing, and all these kind of thoughts you could have, you're enforcing that type of mentality, so you'll repetitively see it that way, and each time you see a body that looks just like that, and you're just focusing the body, all you do is you're exciting that sexual energy, and you're fueling that animalistic energy within you, and that's not the way of unconditional love. That's not a way to make a long-lasting relationship, because if you go into it in the wrong reason, which could be this romantic love, if you go into it in the wrong reason, you could also be coming out of it with wrong results, with what can essentially build some karma, bad karma, and trauma, something that will lead to you to some other unpleasant event in the future. For me, particularly, it's just remembering that there's a difference between seeing them in a body only and seeing that the path to get to a place where you actually have that person in a sexual intercourse. It takes friendship. It takes getting to know that person and getting to know the person on a soul level, because then whenever you meet them in the future, if your relationship just transformed and you moved on, you wouldn't have these bad emotions towards them. You didn't enact the karma that would lead you to bad emotions during breakup or the bad emotions later on. And instead, I mean, you want to steer away from building more and more karma, at least the bad karma. You want to create that foundation of relationships that mean something for you. So that's what I kind of look at when I see somebody, and instead of allowing that sexual energy to take me into this physical sensory pleasure type of ride, I calm it down, and remind myself, talk to myself, and remind myself that there's a path to walk, and I don't necessarily have to walk it in this way. I can walk it in a way where it's going to lead to healthy results for my evolution. That's me at least.
Excellent. You made some really good points that I actually wanted to make later, but you made them, so thank you. So what else? I think that's important, Joel, what you said about the lusting over someone, because it's very true that, and we know this for anything, if we do an action over and over, it strengthens it. And so we want to make sure that we have self-discipline to get rid of those perpetuating cycles, those patterns, because as we self-master ourselves, we're getting rid of patterns that don't serve our evolution. And a lot of those are the lower vibrations. So I was curious, outside of what Joel and I had said, what else do other people do to have that discipline for themselves? Jerry.
I was just going to say, it might kind of tie in a little bit to what you guys had said, but I think just awareness is a really, really good place to start. I'm pretty sure it's from the lessons here at Evolve Ministry, where I remember something along the lines. So I think that's Judith. Hi, Judith. We can hear you. No, something along the lines of, yeah, so like you see someone that's attractive and it's just like your body going, oh, they'd be a good mate. Oh, they'd be a good mate. And okay, so what? They'd be a good mate. Maybe we don't know that. And then, to touch upon what Joel had said earlier, you need that foundation of friendship or real relationship, that you connect mentally, emotionally, that you have the same values. So to connect to the universal connection, I'm always researching how things work, how we operate. And, I want to be in a relationship where I can share this kind of information with someone that's not going to think it too crazy or too out of the, the normal. And, lucky enough, I've been able to find someone like that. But, really having the awareness that you don't, I like the way that Joel said it, where you don't really want to reinforce these routines over and over and over, but we kind of have the different angle of rather than kind of disassociating from these feelings that we don't want, quote unquote, we can just have the awareness of, okay, I'm having these lustful sensations, I'm having these impulses, no biggie, I understand, this is how I work. And, work with that. If you're interested in that person lustfully, try to get to know them better, perhaps. And it's either you're going to really quickly find out if this is the kind of person you're going to want to spend more time with, or no, those are just some lustful impulses. An unconditional love to you, I'll see you around. We be friends. It doesn't have to go much further than that. That's all I just wanted to throw in.
Yep. Good. Yes. Did someone else have something to share? Okay, maybe not. Well, we are nearing end time, so I wanted to just open it to see if anyone else had something to say, maybe a finishing remark about your experience between these two different aspects or these different shades of love. I wanted to say hi, Judith. Good to see you. I'm glad you could join us. And so does anyone have any other remarks based upon universal connection, based upon these different shades of love, something that may have come up during this webinar, new perspectives or something? Nope. Okay.
Well, one thing that leads to the webinar, like last week, the last time we did the different shades of love, we did lead into the next webinar that has to do with trauma. And I just wanted to give a recap that we did discuss the trauma webinar, and that would be released. I just want to give people the chance to see this webinar again, because this is pretty much the webinar that sets the stage for the whole concept and discussion of trauma. Do you want to give a few words on that, Daniel? Because you were there.
Yeah, so that was a good webinar. I'm glad I participated in it, and Joel, you did a good job, by the way. But I got a new perspective, because I thought trauma was like these big events that happen in our lives. So, a breakup is a big event. A parent dies is a big event. You get a promotion, or you get a lot more money, and so you have more opportunity. That's a big event. And those are positive, but the traumatic events, like the breakup or someone dying, or something just didn't happen the way you wanted it to, and you replay it over and over and over. You talk about it over and over and over for however long. Like the little things that upset us sometimes that we talk about for years shows that we have been traumatized in some way, shape, or form. And so I got this different perspective, this new perspective, which has actually helped me look at myself in a different way, that shows that, maybe a friendship that I had, or maybe something I regretted or I didn't like. Well, 5 years down the road, I'm still talking about it. I still have some kind of negative emotional charge to it. So that says that it still bothers me. It still triggers me. It's still a trauma, for lack of a better way of saying it. And I think, Joel, you said trauma is like a negative response of the nervous system.
It's pretty much stored energy in the nervous system.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we have this energy, and again, these traumas, they are triggers, and every time it gets triggered and we respond to it in the same way or in a negative way, it almost encourages it as well. And so we build upon those traumas. And I mean, I now understand more about PTSD, that why people have one traumatic experience and it can change their entire life. 20 years later, they still have the trauma. They still think about it. They still have the feeling of it, the fear of it. And so that was a really good eye-opener for me, to see trauma in that way. So if you guys were in a part of it, I suggest looking at it, watching it.
Yeah. And then how do you see it now in conjunction to romantic love and its repercussions?
Say that again?
And how do you see it now in conjunction to romantic love and its repercussions?
Well, a lot of people get stuck on their relationships. They don't want to let go to, this person did this to me, or that relationship traumatized me. Like, they'll use the word, whereas they're still thinking about it. They're still going through those motions. And with practicing these techniques that we teach here and these discussions that we're having, like you said, Jerry, awareness is key. So if we're aware that we're having this trauma and we're going through this cycle, all we have to do is take a different action. We have to consistently take a different action, because as we do that, we're literally rewiring our brain. We're making new neurological connections in our brain. And as we do that more and more, we'll strengthen that, that pathway, and that negative charge will start to discharge. That negative charge or that trauma will become just a memory, just like everything else that doesn't affect us, in that way. So, yes, exactly. Letting go of resentment.
Yeah, I see that it comes a lot to people when it comes to romantic love, is that it leads them on this cascade of emotions. It can lead them to the dark side, you can say. That it leads them to grudges and resentment and so on and so forth. And it just leads you to being stuck in a perspective that is not beneficial for either of your relationship. The growth that can come out from meeting each other in the middle. I remember from our previous webinar on different shades of love, is that there's like the difference between unconditional love and romantic love. Is that romantic love, sometimes the love does not equal on both sides. Sometimes one person can just be infatuated, and so infatuated with somebody that could be stalking them and could be especially always thinking about them, wanting to get something, walking down the street through the mall and seeing all these things remind them of them. And they're so distracted by this person because they're infatuated with them. And it can lead them to just losing control over their emotions, over their thoughts, and their whole system. But while it comes to unconditional love, is that both parties meet in the middle and interface, which is what we're doing when we're connected to the universe, is that you are setting up the condition to interface with the universe. It's meeting you in the middle. So that's my analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a very good analogy. And I think that would be a good way to end the webinar, actually, because you just covered those two aspects of unconditional love. So I also wanted to just mention, thank you guys for participating, and thanks, Joel, for being co-host. It's good to see all of you, and just keep these things that we've discussed in mind when the next thing happens, or when you see the next person you're attracted to, or if you're in a relationship or a marriage, maybe this will put a different perspective on how you two interact, maybe why certain interactions go the way they do. Because, you know, like mentioned before, we have those expectations, to some degree dependency or possessiveness. These are ways of the ego. These are things that are to some degree controlling us, or we're allowing them to control us. So just keep these in mind, and at any time when you feel triggered, realize it's a trigger, it's a signal. Send yourself love, so send yourself unconditional love, and also, you know, try to let go of that negativity. Try to not get so triggered in the first place, because we want to maintain that connection. And you know, in those relationships that we have, the argument is a disconnection. It might be a disagreement, but there's positive ways of disagreeing. There's positive ways of discussing. So you both meet in the middle, as you said, Joel. So that is the webinar. So yeah, we want to make sure that we are always in an unconditional loving state.
Yes. Thank you, Daniel.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you guys for showing up.
Thank you, Daniel. That was awesome. Thank you, Joel. Until the next
See you
time.
guys.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks, guys. See ya.